Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So 7 months ago, I installed an inverter on my RAV4 Prime 2021 XSE model. So in Canada, the RAV4 Prime, the inverter, the 1500 watts inverter only comes in the XSE tech package, which I did not take. So I bought the XSE model. So I decided to install an inverter back in May, but I received a lot of questions since from a lot of you guys asking me, hey Badgie, is the inverter strong enough to actually support the devices I'm going to use? I'm avoiding my warranty. Is the battery actually going to be depleted? And how does it work? And does the DC to DC converter have enough power to actually charge the battery and provide enough charge? Let's say I want to use a water boiler, if I want to use a toaster. So all these questions, I kept receiving them. So with the help of one of the friends in the community, so I just want to shout out Benoit, who helped me a lot to do these tests with his instruments. So I did not have all these instruments, and without him, I could not have been able to test these. So with Benoit, we try to test a lot of scenarios on how much power the DC to DC converter is able to provide to the 12-volt battery in order to run off an inverter. And in my case, if you haven't watched my video, I'm going to try to post it somewhere here. I did install a 1200 watts inverter, and I've been using it ever since. So this video will help you. I hope it's going to help if you guys to give you a little bit of answers on what goes on in the DC to DC converter and 12-volt battery for the inverter installation. So let's get to it. So we do have the setup here to measure everything we wanted to test. I want to thank my friend Benoit, who actually lent me all these tools here to measure this. So the first step here, we have the voltmeter here, a multimeter, to measure the volt coming from the battery. So to see what's the state of health it is. Afterwards, we have here to measure the amperes. So this is the amperes coming from the battery. So the measurement we will see here is times 12 volt. So that's the difference. And the last setup here is plugged directly into the AC plug. So this is going to measure also the amperes, but with 120 volt. And obviously we're going to be testing this with the one and only toaster. So that's the one I showed you in the last video. Unfortunately, I don't have Cinviator Bagel this time, but at least we'll have a good test for this. All right, so let's do this. So before we start, really important to mention, guys, is you have to be in ready mode. As you can see here, before the voltmeter was at 14 because I was in ready mode. Right now, it's at 12.4, and it's dropping a little bit. So this is the state in which it is in when it's not in ready mode and it's not being charged. But if you want to do any kind of these tests, and if you want to use the inverter, you always have to make sure to put in ready mode. Also, you're going to completely deplete this battery. So let's go put it in ready mode, and we'll check back again how much it is at. So you could see now 14.42. So why did it increase? So when you put it in ready mode, your DC to DC converter will charge the 12-volt battery. Hence why you see a spike here in voltage. So we went from 12.4 to 14.36 now. So that means the battery is getting charged. Now let's get to the test. So for the test, as I mentioned, we have the toaster here. I just want to mention that this is rated for 750 watts. So when I'm going to turn this on, technically all the measurements should match up for 750 watts. So this one, as I said, is on 12 volt measurement, and this one it is for the 120 volt. So let's just put this on. All right, so I can hear the inverter turning on. So let's check the first one here. So we are at 6.38. So at 6.38 times 120 volt, you're roughly at 747 or 750 watts, which is perfect. And even here we're at 66 amperes times 12, so that also matches up. So now what we're gonna do is we have to find out if the DC to DC converter is giving enough power to the battery so it can provide juice for the inverter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this one here and we're gonna plug it all the way here at the entry point where the DC to DC converter gives juice for the 12-volt battery. So let's get to that. So the amp meter is plugged into the entryway where the DC to DC converter comes to the battery. As you can see here, we're already getting 14.3 voltage, and that's because we've been doing some tests. Well, I've been doing some tests on the accessory mode, so the battery was a little low. So right now the DC to DC converter is charging the battery. And as for the amperes here, it's not at 0. We're still getting 5.30 here amperes coming in. So that's pretty much, you know, some lights are still on. I think the headlight is still on, the daytime running light, and I have these lights too running. So that might be the cause why we're still getting some here. So in theory, if I do turn this on, I'm supposed to have around 66 amperes or more to actually compensate for the power that this is consuming through the inverter. So let's try to do that actually. So this is on. So a little dip here in voltage, but it's going back up from what I see. So the DC to DC converter is working. And for this, here you go. It's keeping up. It's at 69 actually. So 69 amperes coming from the DC to DC converter to the battery. And we calculated before that 66 amperes was going from the battery to the inverter to power this. So as you can see, following our test, the DC to DC converter definitely holds up to the power we need. The only thing we need to verify in this case is, let's say we do want to run this for, let's say, an hour or something else for an hour. Well, obviously I'm not going to run a toaster for an hour, but let's say you have another device that runs for an hour and takes around 900 or even 1000 watts. The only thing I'm not sure is the cable that comes from the DC to DC converter to the battery. We have no idea what kind of gauge it is, or if it's capable of actually taking that much heat for that long. So the only way to find out is if you disassemble the car, find out what kind of cable it is, and that's the only way you can find out. I know I've read Professor Weber actually, Professor Weber or Kelly, I'll check that later. He mentioned that for the Prius Prime it is 100 amperes, I believe, coming from the DC to DC converter. And he confirmed that for the RAV4 Prime is 150 amperes. So I'm still not sure if it's going to support 150 amperes for like an hour or two. But then again, that's at your own risk. So if you guys, anyone finds out, what kind of wire, what kind of gauging Toyota used, if there's any Toyota mechanics here or experts here who can give me that answer, that would be very much appreciated. So one last test to check the DC to DC converter capacity. So we have a boiler here which is rated at 1500 watts. The inverter is rated at 1200 watts. So for sure this is going to trip. But I just want to check how much amperes is actually coming from the DC to converter, and to see if it's going to actually support the load that it needs. So let's just try this. I'm pretty sure it's going to trip. So let's just do this now. So as you can see here, it's going at 120, 28, even 133. And yeah, it's still going. I'm just going to stop this because it's clearly over the limit of what the inverter can take. So I'm just going to stop it here. But yeah, the DC to DC converter will provide when you need it. I hope you liked the video. Thanks once again for watching. If you have any questions, or if you have any comments about the video, or even any suggestions of any other videos I should be doing, please write them in the comment section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel as well if you haven't done so. And I'll see you next time.